Revenge is a dish best served dead.
The Undertaker is dead! Dead!
It's the rebirth of a phenom. The Undertaker returns to face his brother, Kane. The dead will rise again. WrestleMania 20, live in 3 days on pay-per-view. Special start time 7/4 Pacific.
What is it?
It's time to go back.
Welcome.
Hey there, welcome back to Generation S. It's a podcast about growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s. And let me put it to you this way. If you remember WrestleMania 20 as being the biggest WrestleMania of all time because it was 20, well, this podcast might be for you. I'm Dan Kemp, joined by Generation S First Ballot Hall of Famer, Lou Carnivale.
It's where it all began again.
That's right.
That was a tagline.
Yes. Yeah, I remember. So we are covering... So, guys, if you missed last week's episode, first off, two things. One, we are on the road to WrestleMania ourselves here with WrestleMania 40 right around the corner. We are covering the big milestone WrestleManias 10, 20, and 30, and maybe a little surprise in there somewhere as well, which we will... I'm going to keep that close to the chest. But also... again, just a reminder, we are making some big changes here on the podcast. We are in a bit of a kind of a transitioning phase here, if you will, and we are going to be rebranding the show from a general 90s nostalgic podcast to strictly retro video games. Now, we're not doing that yet. We still got a couple more episodes to cover of Generation S for WrestleMania time. But once that is done, we will be shifting gears into a video game-centric podcast because it's something I've always wanted to do. We're doing a retro gaming theme, and we're calling it Backwards Compatible. And Lou and I are going to be the main hosts. We may bring in other guests as well, but it'll be me, you, and, our loving audience, Lou, for going forward, man. I'm very excited.
Yes. Well, I think this might be a good opportunity since we're in WrestleMania season to let the folks know what the first episode is going to be. Kind of coincides with WrestleMania season, and then let them know, like you said, it's going to be a little bit more than just talking about a game. May I divulge that information? Go ahead. So the first game we're going to talk about when we make this change in the next couple of weeks is actually, no surprise, WWF WrestleMania 2000 on N64. Yep. Now we're picking that to kind of flow from WrestleMania into the video games, and we're picking a WrestleMania game. That works perfectly. But as we've been doing, and we'll do for the next week or so, is we're talking about WrestleMania. So, for example, when we're talking about WrestleMania 2000 on the N64, we're actually going to also talk about WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16. Yep. We're going to discuss that as well. So it's not going to be just the game. It's going to be that also. Like, for example, also, if we do a Star Wars game, we'll kind of try to time it around something else that's coming out in Star Wars. Maybe it's a show, maybe it's a movie, or a book, or whatever. It's not going to be just, we're talking about Shadows of the Empire N64. Well, no, we're going to talk about that, but hey, this also is out. This is going on. Things like that.
Yep, absolutely. So the video games will drive the discussion, but they will not dominate the discussion. So hopefully that's still for you if you're listening to this, and hopefully you're willing to give that a shot here. I know we're on episode 80, I think, at this point, so which is crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, if you're listening to this, you've gotten to know me, you've gotten to know Lou over the last couple of years, and you're willing to kind of listen to one of our other passions, which is old school video games. So that's the plan. Now, we will not be. It's still going to be a Generation S branded podcast, so we're calling it Backwards. The official title is Backwards Compatible : a Generation S podcast, but we're just going to, obviously, for brevity's sake, we're going to call it backwards compatible. So the Generation S branding is not going anywhere. We're still going to keep up the shop, by the way. If you want to check out some merch, you can do so at the link in the description below. Generation S will be around. It's still around on YouTube. We're keeping that. This is just going to be a change of pace for the podcast, and maybe every once in a while we'll pepper in a Generation S special. Who knows? I don't know. We could. Why not, right? So, but anyway, this week we are on part 2 of our road to WrestleMania. We're talking WrestleMania 20. Now, Lou, this is a big one for you because this is the I guess this is the first WrestleMania you ever attended in person, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. It was also the first pay-per-view I ever attended in person.
Okay, so big on both fronts. It was a big deal, man. It was. Yep. So when okay, so let's back up. Before we get into the event itself, I'd love to hear, I've never heard this story from you. I know, so this is what I remember from what you've told me. Was this like a graduation present for you?
Yeah, it was either go on the Florida trip with the high school to Disney or go to WrestleMania 20. I don't think my parents even got the word WrestleMania fully out of their mouth. And I'm like, no, pretty sure Disney will be, and I made the right call. Disney will be around. WrestleMania may not come back to this era for a while. And it never has come back to the Garden. And at this point, it will never go back to Madison Square Garden.
Nope. Closest you get is New York, New Jersey in the Jets-Giants Stadium, which is fine. It's not too far away. But
yep.
So, all right. So who went with you? Was it you, both your parents and you?
Nope, just me and my dad. And fun fact, back in the day when they would record tickets going on sale and stuff like that, I was actually in the commercial for WrestleMania 20 when they show that tickets went on sale.
Really? So you were in line getting the tickets, or how did that happen?
No, I mean, the funny thing about that is, and I won't go into too much of a rant about this, I promise. So this is before you had StubHub and all that other stuff, which is good, bad, or indifferent, to each their own. My uncle worked in Manhattan, and he went to the Garden beforehand to kind of scope out what was going on. And they made him go to, I can't remember, but it could have been Central Park. I don't think so, though, but some other location. They were actually making people line up away from Madison Square Garden. I don't know what they were doing. So I took the train into the city, and as I'm walking towards the Garden with my uncle, there was a small line forming around it, because the Garden is a giant circle. Yep. So there's a line forming around it. And as we're walking towards the end of the line, around the corner as I'm looking forward, around the corner is a legitimate, mob of people running. As a kid, it looked like hundreds. It was probably maybe 50 to 100 people.
Okay.
But it looked like it was a lot more. And my uncle had no idea what was going on. He just kind of shoves us at the end of the line, goes, just wait here. So I wait. That was everybody that was at this other location all realized they were been lied to or things changed, and they all ran to the Garden. So I was at the front of the line as opposed to where everybody else was. It was, can I get my curse word out of the way? It was a shit show. Terrible way of doing it. It was bad. So this is on a Friday night. So you had to wait, and they would give you a wristband. Okay. So then you went back home, you got up, and you went back to the Garden, and you got in line order based on the number on your wristband. It was a long time just to get a ticket. So you get up to the window, you get your ticket. My seats were, if you're looking, because it wasn't a traditional WrestleMania at the Garden or event at the Garden where they don't have any sets. This WrestleMania actually had a set. So if you're looking at the entrance, I'm to the left of the entrance. When I looked straight out of my seat, I actually didn't see the ring. I saw the set. So I had to sit on an angle. Was pretty cool, though. I'll get to a reason why later. So they had the WWE cameras there. And, they would say, hey, guys, act excited, do this, do that. When I got my tickets, my dad goes, jump off the stairs or something like that. Not all, high upstairs, but, a couple steps. And I said, I'm going to WrestleMania. And not only did they put me in it, I was at the end, and they echoed my voice. And then it cuts to JR. It's like, well, the road to WrestleMania is happening. I'm like, well, that's me. And it is awesome. Still on the WWE Network. It is. I don't know what episode of Raw it is, but it's Raw from the fall of 2003.
Okay. So, yeah, because tickets would have gone on sale. You're right. Yeah, they would have gone on sale many months beforehand, and I'm sure they probably sold out pretty quick,
I want to say September, October, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
So that's my main claim to fame.
I love that's fantastic, man. Well, and again, before we get into the actual like the match card, because I want to go through this is so of all the WrestleManias we will be covering, this is the one where I was truly in the thick of it as far as a fan of watching every week, at least Raw. I didn't watch SmackDown because I didn't have cable, so we didn't have UPN. But I was watching Raw, and I knew all the storylines going into this. In fact, I'm looking at the match card, and I can probably recall for the most part what the story was behind each match, if there was one, at least on the Raw side. But this was, I mean, for lack of a better term, this was the the prime era for ruthless aggression, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. And we're coming off 3 consecutive either good, great, or the best WrestleMania of all time. 17, 18, and 19 at the worst was good, which is still above average. All 3 of those WrestleManias were great.
Yeah, I would say, and so 20, obviously a lot of big shoes to fill there. We are in a post WCW folding and post ECW folding era where WWE is firmly the number one wrestling company. If not the world, I mean, definitely North America. I would say the world, because I feel like New Japan wasn't really as big back then, maybe. I don't know.
No, and I the one stat I got about New Japan, it's recent, is what WWE makes in a week, Japan makes in a month.
Okay, so even now, like to this day, or are you talking about back then?
No, this is now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's not even still close.
Yeah, it's not. So it wasn't, and TNA was a baby. TNA was 2 years old.
Yeah, TNA was still, were they doing even like the pay per episode shows on Fox Sports Net or whatever? Or
at this point, I remember at my high school graduation, prom night was the night that Impact went to Fox Sports, and I had my dad record on VHS.
Oh, nice.
So they were about to go onto weekly television on Fox Sports. So yeah, it was right around the corner, but yeah, still a baby.
Yep. So this was the only real game in town if you wanted to watch, decent quality wrestling on a week-to-week basis. And so, yeah, I mean, so let's just jump into it then, because again, I know the story behind most of these matches, and I'm very excited because so fun fact, I've never actually watched this event in its entirety. Ever. Like I've watched matches, but I've never watched the whole thing start to finish before.
So fun fact before we start, I could talk about the dark match.
Let's talk about the dark match.
There was no dark match. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. There was, when I mean nothing, I've been to events and they have a dark match or they play music videos, or there was nothing. This is during the days of Sunday Night Heat. It was definitely a coach. Maybe it was Al Snow. Maybe it was Raven. I don't remember. They weren't even hosting Sunday Night Heat from in the Garden. I think they were at Times Square, or maybe they were still at WWF New York or the World, whatever they called it. There was nothing, which was really weird because, I was excited like, ooh, what guys are not going to be on the show but are going to be doing a dark match, even just for us? Nope, nothing.
Nothing. And was there anything post? I mean, usually after the event, sometimes there is, but
no, it was a big it was a big celebration. So, I mean, it started off with the Boys Choir of Harlem, which in New York is a very, very important thing. It's got a very good legacy. And then we were off to the races with a great promo, which introduced Shane's
son.
I don't know if it was his daughter.
Yeah.
Son, yeah. That was the first one.
It was 3 generations of McMahon. I remember that. Yep, that promo I remember, and that was wild to see because now his son, I believe, is like in college, in like college football.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he'd be 20 years old.
Yeah, that's wild.
It is. So, and then we get awesome pyro, and it was like streamers from the top of the arena down, and off we go. We got Big Show and Cena.
All right, well, let's jump into it then. So John Cena, by the way, at this point, this was probably, I mean, I hate to say it, this was like peak popularity Cena at this. Well, no, I guess WrestleMania 21 would have been his peak as far as popularity with the fans, like even the smart fans, right? He was still kind of on his rise up here, still very much into the Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick, and but he's a babyface. He's the good guy here, and then he's facing off against the Big Show for the United States champion. And I've never actually watched this match, Lou. So what were your thoughts on this match, though?
It was a good match. I actually would say this is some of the best in-ring work Big Show ever did. They made him a dominant upper mid-carder. He had beaten Eddie Guerrero for the U.S. title at No Mercy in October, I want to say.
Okay.
And he was just having really good matches. You know, him and Eddie. Well, but then again, you know, he talked about WrestleMania 21, going to soapbox for a second. Well, JBL was a good champion, but look who JBL worked with going into WrestleMania 21. Anybody could have done. I don't want to say anybody. I mean that respectfully, but it was pretty much a who's who. Big Show was having good matches, but he was fighting Eddie, he was fighting Angle, he was fighting Cena, he was fighting Lesnar. He was having good matches with good guys. But this was a very good match, and you pretty much knew Cena was going to win, but he does something impressive in the match. He does it again in the future, but at the time, it was the first time somebody did that. I don't know if you want me to discuss that already, or you want to go over some of the match itself.
No, again, because I haven't seen this match, so I wouldn't have much to add there. So if you want to talk about the finish, was it the finish or
the finish was Cena hits him with the attitude adjustment. Back then, it was called the FU, kids, and Big Show kicked out. What?
Okay, yeah.
So, at the time, people had body slammed Big Show. But even Lesnar, when he F5'd him, he F5'd him, that was it. He wasn't picking him up again. That's 500 and something pounds.
Yeah.
So he did it. And he hit him with the knucks. He did it. He won, semi-clean, I guess. Well, he hit him with knucks. So, the crowd was into it. He was super over. That was the triangle kind of looking U.S. title, which I was never a fan of. Never a fan of that U.S. title.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who. Okay, so as far as because we'll always off mic we'll have these conversations of when you think of a belt, who do you picture with that belt? So for that belt right there, the pre-Cena Spinner U.S. belt, who do you picture with that belt?
Probably Cena.
Cena,
just because I was there. Yeah.
Okay, so
which doesn't make any sense because he only had it probably that night.
Right. Yeah.
But if you ask somebody, in Boston that went to WrestleMania 14, well, who do you associate with the Winged Eagle? Austin, because I was there.
Yeah.
And, that image is burned in your mind because you went there and you probably watched it, or you've seen the image of him holding the title so much.
Yeah.
I've just seen the image of Cena holding that U.S. title in the corner with the WrestleMania, entrance behind him so many times. That's burned into my brain. It's a silly answer, but that is the reason why. But it was a good match.
Yeah.
Cena's over with the crowd. He knows what he's doing at this point. Big Show, I think, is in the prime of his in-ring career, and the crowd was into it, and it was a good opener.
Yeah. And that's especially at an event at the caliber of WrestleMania. That opener really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the event, and it gets you hyped up. And as long as you can, and I feel like there is certainly a strategy to how you put the next matches on the card as far as up and down, the emotional reactions and things like that. If you just have banger after banger, you're going to burn out pretty quickly. So you kind of do some low key stuff in between, right?
And this was the first time I ever realized that. I'd been to Raws and SmackDowns, but this was the first time there's a reason why they're doing this and this and this. And another cool thing is, especially during John Cena's entrance, you'll see throughout the night, it was the first time they had secondary Trons. They had the main Titantron, they had the mini Tron back in the day, but this was the first time they had another type of Titantron. So when the guys are coming out, they're standing on plexiglass, and underneath the glass is another mini Titantron, so you could see it when Cena's coming out, and somebody slips and falls on that. But I'll mention that later too.
Yeah, and what about 5 matches? We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yep, I know what you're talking about. All right, well then let's move on to the second. By the way, the timestamp for that match was 9 minutes and 14 seconds long, so not bad.
Perfect.
Not bad. A little opener.
Timing.
Yep. All right, up next, we have the first of two fatal four-way matches, this one for the World Tag Team Championship, which was the Raw Tag Team Championship at the time. We have RVD and Booker T as the champions, defending against Garrison Cade and Mark Jindrak, the Dudley Boys, in this case, Bubba Ray and Devon, La Resistance, in this case, Rene Dupree and Rob Conway. So, yeah.
Rob Conway.
Rob Conway. Oh,
We're
man.
laughing because when we used to play the SmackDown games, Dan loved the entrance theme for Rob Conway.
Best entrance theme of all time is
The
Rob
Conway
Conway.
Pop.
Yes, the Conway Pop. It was amazing. So, okay. So, again, haven't seen this one its entirety. I don't know. I feel like this, when there's this many guys in the ring and you're trying to do something structured, I feel like it falls apart. But again, you tell me, you watched it. What were your thoughts?
It was just okay. I was excited because Van Dam and the Dudleys were on the card. That was
In
super
the Garden.
exciting.
Yeah,
for me.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm seeing WCW and ECW boys at the Garden at a WrestleMania, and was it a throwaway match? It kind of was, but they get the nice payday, and I would think for some guys, especially the Dudleys, so you're at WrestleMania in the Garden. That means something.
Yeah,
I like most would say it would have been better off just if it was Van Dam and Booker versus the Dudleys.
yeah.
You did need a storyline. It could have just been Van Dam and Booker were the champs, and the Dudleys go, we want our belts back. Okay, let's go. Give them, how long was the match? I want to say 7 minutes off the top of my head.
You're close. 7 minutes, 49 seconds.
Go tear down the house for 7 minutes and 49 seconds, guys.
Yeah.
They didn't need a storyline. They did not need a storyline. Not those four, not this arena, not this marquee event. They didn't need anything.
Yeah.
I do remember Van Dam and Booker T had the god-awful remix of Booker T's theme song from, what CD was that?
That was the not Ruthless Aggression. It was was it Forcible Entry or
No, it wasn't Forcible
another
Entry.
one.
There was another. Originals. It was Originals.
And it was like the Can You Dig It Sucker? It was like the rap one where Booker T's rapping on it, right?
Yes, and they put in Van Dam's like one of a kind from like the beginning of his.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst entrance themes I've ever heard of. The combo themes have come a long way since then. It was nothing special. It really wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I've watched it. I don't think Devon legally even gets tagged in the match.
Oh, really?
They win. Booker and Van Dam win. Van Dam hits the 5-star frog splash. You could tell at the end Van Dam was a little excited when it, at the end he wanted to do the thumbs, but it was what it was. But there's a funny skit that starts, and I'll just go over the skits.
Yeah.
They're backstage, and Coach is hearing noises, and he opens up.
I remember this one.
It's
like a broom closet, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a broom closet or something, and it's Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund.
Yep.
And they have like kiss marks all over them, and it's Mae Young and Moolah later. There's a couple of things that go on because he's looking for the Undertaker.
Oh, that's right.
Why
yeah.
you would look, even in storyline, why would you want to look for anyway? So it was awesome. You got to see Bobby Heenan. They weren't, in ring or in the crowd, but yeah, it was cool to see that. It was cool to see Bobby and Mean Gene. Another thing, we'll get out of the way now. I'm not going to go into it because it kind of involves politics. The Hall of Fame class that Jesse Ventura get put in. Donald Trump was in the front row, and Jesse Ventura talks politics about how he might run for president and how Donald Trump would support him. Here we are in 2024. Wow, okay. Roles were reversed a little bit there, huh, Trumpy boy and Mr. Ventura, huh? But that happened at Red. So I'm just trying to get the skits because I don't know exactly when they happen throughout the night. So we had Donald Trump, we had Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan, Gene Okerlund, Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah. There was a lot of legends that were involved in this. It was pretty cool.
Well, and so first off, I feel like this was kind of the kickoff to bringing legends back on a consistent basis. But this was also, from what I recall, the first time they really featured and showed clips from the Hall of Fame ceremony. Because going forward, it became a thing. I guess that you're right. So it was the first time they really had an official televised ceremony. But did they actually do it in full, or was it they just showed clips from it? Because I remember like 21 going forward had like the full ceremony.
Yeah, this was the first one back because when they had done Hall of Fames, it was usually just like a banquet for somebody.
Okay.
This was an actual, event, and they showed highlights of it, but they released it on DVD. I don't even know if it's on the network.
Yeah, I
or
don't know.
Peacock or Netflix, wherever the hell everything's living now. But
Right.
if you're like me, you just go into your room and you pull out the DVD and you can actually watch it. So it was the first one. It was Jesse Ventura and I want to say Superstar Billy Graham were the two headliners. I can't remember the rest off the top of my head.
Bobby Heenan went in. That was the thing. Was Bobby Heenan
was
winning.
he?
Yeah.
Was he? Or is he 21?
No. He inducted. Who did he induct in 21? He inducted somebody in 21, but no, he. Yeah, no, he got inducted at 20, and that was the big big thing. Because remember, he talks about like I wish Monsoon was here. And,
oh yeah,
and so
Gorilla and Bobby all day, man.
No, so it was Billy. Yeah, it was Billy Graham. It was Bobby Heenan. Was it George Animal Steel too?
No, I don't think it was.
No? I don't. There was a few though. There was a handful, but again, going forward, it got to be like huge classes. Like they got bigger and bigger.
Oh, Don Morocco. I want to say
Don
also.
Morocco. Tito Santana, I think, went in that year too.
Yes, Tito did go in. Yep.
So there you go. See, I knew it. I remembered it. Okay, let's move on here to match number 3. Singles match here. I remember this match very well, at least the leading up to it, and then the twist. We have Christian versus Chris Jericho in a straight singles match here. I guess you'd call it a grudge match because up until this point, Christian and Chris Jericho were in fact teaming together as a tag team. They were doing very well. In fact, there was one particular night I remember where they couldn't find their clothes because the Dudleys stole their clothes and they were walking around in towels all night.
Behind like the Minitron, you saw them like lose the towels and stuff.
Yes. So anyway, but then Christian turns on Chris Jericho. They're fighting at Mania here, and big plot twist here involving one of the WWE female superstars. Or no, had that already happened? I'm trying to think.
No, it
happened
turns
at Mania.
Here.
Yeah,
because Trish didn't have a match, which was unusual.
Yeah.
And she got involved in the match, and because Christian was being a jerk, trying to hook up with Trish, and even in the match, like I believe he like shoves her down or shoves her off the apron, and Jericho goes to get her up, and either she elbows him, or I think she elbows him by accident, and Christian rolls him up. But either way, she slaps the shit out of Jericho. He hits the kill switch or the unpretty or whatever you want to call it, and Christian gets probably up to that point, even though he's IC champ, the biggest victory of his career. You beat Chris Jericho at WrestleMania, and Trish turns heel and aligns herself with you. Off to the races, man.
Yeah.
That was a big moment.
It was. No, I agree. It was crazy because, Trish had been face for a few years, ever since she turned on Vince before WrestleMania 17. And, she just straight, because, that's right. She had aligned herself with Chris Jericho, and he thought, oh, they're like a thing or whatever. It's cool. And then she slaps him, right? And she slaps him in the face, I think. And
I know she definitely slaps him in the face, yes.
Yeah. And then she just ends up with Christian, and you're like, what the hell, man? And then Christian, I think this was where he really, because you see Christian now, and you're like, he's great. I feel like this is the start of that, right? It was right around this time where he was like a viable single star.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. This was when Christian really started to take off. And remember, we're in 2004. 2 years later, I believe he's in TNA in 2006, the end of 06. So he's not there. They tried to push him, and it, for whatever reason, creative fans, it just didn't go as far as they thought, and he's off the TNA in 06, 07 and becomes their champ, which, to me, I'm going to quickly say, that is such an underrated moment in wrestling history.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't released. He decided to go there by himself.
Yep.
My contract's up. Off I go. I want to do this. That changed everything. That's bigger than Mox and Jericho going to AEW because AEW had the money. Eventually, somebody would have went. TNA still wasn't that big yet, and Christian going was a big deal. But it's not about TNA or that run for Christian, but you're 100% right. It was a good match, too, and that's what everything's going to be in this. Everything was good. This was a very, very good match.
I don't know if I agree that everything was good.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you're right.
Thank you. Okay. Just so you know, that match, 14 minutes, 56 seconds long, the longest match on the card so far.
Yep. Good match, though.
Out of the 3. Good match. All right, up next, we have a 3-on-2 handicap match with Evolution, consisting of Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair, facing off against the Rock and Sock Connection. The Rock and Mick Foley. That was exciting. That was big because it felt like, it's funny because you look now like you got The Rock going into WrestleMania 40. He's going to fight on night 1. It's confirmed. He hasn't wrestled in WWE. Like he had that thing against Eric Rowan. Doesn't count. His last match was WrestleMania 29.
Yeah.
So 11 years ago.
Yeah.
You look here at WrestleMania 20. The Rock, it felt like he had been gone forever. He fought at the last Mania.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
And he fought at Backlash against Goldberg, and that was it. He was gone for about a year.
But it felt like forever. Whereas now, I don't know. It maybe because we're getting older and time moves faster. But it's like it's just crazy that it wasn't really that long if you think about it before he came back, and he left again after this. He didn't stick around, obviously. But I was pretty. I mean, okay, so. You were the WWF guy. I was a WCW guy, so I didn't really follow WWF when the Rock and Sock Connection was a thing the first time. Like, was this a big deal? Like, were you excited about this, the idea that they were back together? Or
no, I was never really a big Rock fan.
Okay.
I wasn't, but the novelty is there.
Yeah.
Because you knew Austin wasn't going to be fighting. So it was cool, but a 3-on-2 match with Mick Foley, who's semi-retired, The Rock, who hasn't wrestled in a year, Flair, who's a part-timer. He's always around, but in-ring, he's a part-timer, and 2 rookies, Batista and Orton, which is really weird to say.
You're right, yeah.
It just, I mean, now you say it's like, whoa, that's like a video game match. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it was a handicap match. It was a good match. Again, it was a good match, like most, not all. Most matches are. The ending really surprised everybody. It was just a clean victory. Orton was faster. He hit the RKO on Foley. But what made me angry was the next month at Backlash, you have Foley and Orton in a hardcore match, and you know, I remember watching it with my mom, out of all people, and Foley takes out the tacks and he puts them on the ground on the mat, and Orton's in his regular wrestling gear. And, I wonder who's going to end up on the tacks. And he goes for an RKO, and Foley pushes him off in midair, and he lands back first. And I remember that pop. The crowd going, holy shit. I saw that. I go, why wasn't that at WrestleMania?
Well,
but
and maybe
as we've learned this year in WrestleMania 40, The Rock wants what The Rock wants. The Rock gets.
I mean, but did he have that star power back then? Not really. I mean, I think
so. Yeah.
Maybe. I guess. Well, this, again, just like the last match, this was the longest match on the card. Once again, at 17 minutes, 2 seconds here with Evolution, as you said, coming out on top with Orton getting the pin on Foley. But again, it set it up for that backlash. It had, I don't know. I didn't mind this match. I thought, this one I've actually watched.
I didn't mind it either, but which match would you rather have seen in person? This or the Orton-Foley hardcore match?
In hindsight, I guess that's true, but I'm not going to lie. Like, if I had to choose between seeing Ric Flair and The Rock in a match versus, I like Mick Foley, but
that
was Randy Orton back then?
True. It's the only time The Rock and Ric Flair, to my knowledge, the only time Ric Flair and The Rock have been in the same ring.
Nope. You were incorrect. I can tell you.
Okay.
It was Raw in 2002 when The Rock was the undisputed champion. Ric Flair challenged him for the undisputed title on Monday Night Raw. And The Rock won.
Okay, so then if it wasn't the first, then I'd rather see Orton and Foley with that. Yeah, I'd rather have seen that match.
That's fair.
Yep.
Either way,
but
it's not a bad match. All right. Our next match, and not the one I was insinuating was the worst match on the card, but this is certainly a close contender for it, in my opinion. We had the Playboy Evening Gown Women's Tag Team match.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, there we go. This is a product of its time. Tori Wilson and Sable against Miss Jackie and Stacy Keibler. I'm guessing this was like a Raw versus SmackDown thing based on this tag team.
You know what? I honestly don't think I've ever watched this. I don't.
Well,
think
you were
I
there.
have.
Or was this your bathroom match when you were there?
I saw it. The only thing I remember is Sable and Tori kissing on the stage right in front of me. But other than that, I really don't. I saw it happen. I don't think I've ever watched it on DVD or on the network. I think I just who cares at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to guess how long this match was?
I don't know. 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
2 minutes, 33 seconds.
If we're talking about the women, You had a backstage. You had a backstage skit with Eric Bischoff and Johnny Nitro.
That's true.
And the SmackDown GM and his assistant wasn't featured in any backstage skits. Do you know who the general manager was?
I believe around this time it would have been Paul Heyman.
And who was
right?
his assistant?
I think it was Dawn Marie, wasn't it?
Nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found.
Hey, by the way, as we're recording this, by the time this comes out, this will be old news, but shout out to Paul Heyman for getting his WWE Hall of Fame induction, by the way.
In Philly. Not surprising.
In Philly.
Yep.
Which leads me to believe more ECW people will be going in, but that's just me.
Yep. I agree.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, so I guess, not much to say there. Match number 6 of the night, our next multi-man match, the Cruiserweight Championship on the line here in the Cruiserweight Open, and we have Chavo Guerrero, who is champion, along with his father, Chavo Classic.
You said it right. I'm like, I wonder if he's gonna remember. It's Chavo Classic.
Chavo Classic? Well, I have to thank Wikipedia for that, but I do remember him as Chavo Classic. When I see him, like, he was introduced as Chavo Classic, so that I remember.
Love it.
Yep. Then we have Akio, who was
Tajiri's boy.
But that was the what's his face? That was the other one.
Jimmy
that was not
Wang
the Jimmy
Yang.
Wang Yang one.
Yeah.
That was not Jimmy Yang. That was the other one that never did anything, I believe, right?
I believe so, yes.
Or was that him? No, that was him, because Sakota was the other guy,
Yes,
right?
Sakota was a little bit bigger.
Yes,
and
then Akio was him. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yes, and he had short hair. I guess they both did. Anyway, so okay.
Shout
so
out to
Akio,
Velocity.
Billy Kidman. This was basically a Velocity match, yeah. So Kidman, Funaki, Jamie Noble, Nunzio, Rey Mysterio, Shannon Moore, Tajiri, and Ultimo Dragon with the greatest entrance on the card.
Yes, and that's the person that slipped on the entrance.
Yes. Did you see that live? Like, did you?
Yeah, because
was it pretty obvious?
Yeah, because I'm looking directly at the stage. Again, if I'm sitting, like how I'm looking at you in the mirror, looking at 12 o'clock straight ahead. If I sat in my seat, looked at 12 o'clock, my view was the side of the entrance ramp.
So they're going left to right from the entrance to the ring for you, basically.
So when they come through the curtain, I see them directly. So I saw Ultimo fall down. And the thing was, he started to run because his pyro was going to go off.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and in case you forgot what Ultimo Dragon's pyro was, it was basically a giant wall of flames. So I'd run from that too.
He hightailed it. Shout out to another ECW boy, Nunzio, making WrestleMania 20 in the Garden. Good for him.
I mean, technically, then let's shout out Rey Mysterio as well. Then, right?
But he's been in other.
And Tajiri.
Yeah, Tajiri. True.
So you had a couple of ECW alum there, and then of course you had Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman from the and Jamie Noble and Akio technically, and Chavo Guerrero, WCW alum,
and Ultimo Dragon,
So Funaki representing the OG, and Shannon Moore. Shannon Moore. This was a WCW Cruiserweight Championship match.
It was.
With a couple of ECW guys. Yes. Yeah. And it was, I'll say, this was a 10-minute match. I've never seen it before. This is the one, was this the one where Mysterio was dressed up as Daredevil? I always try to remember his appearances.
Daredevil is 19. No. This is the Flash.
This is the Flash. Okay.
Yep.
I knew it was one. It was a red one.
Yep.
Okay.
This match was, it was a high spot fest. But that's fine. But in hindsight, a fatal 4-way would have been better.
So just too many people, in your opinion.
Too many people.
So if of those 4 people, obviously you had to have Chavo because he was champion. Who would have been your other 3?
So he's a heel, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you got to put Mysterio in.
Yep.
Guilty pleasure? I would say Tajiri no matter what. Tajiri's not a guilty pleasure. Tajiri earned that. So he's the other heel.
Okay.
And you got to put a face in. So, Ultimo Dragon, you got him. Might as well use him.
Yeah, this is really the pinnacle of his career, if you think about it, in WWE at least.
Oh, in WWE, yeah. He did way better in WCW.
No, I agree. What I'm saying is, like, this is as good as it got for him. So, yeah, I agree. This was, like, the only time you were going to get his moment. So I would agree with those 4 people. Chavo, Tajiri, Mysterio, and Ultimo Dragon.
Yeah, I think they would have been great.
Yep. So... Not that any of these guys were bad wrestlers.
No,
like
not
if
at
you
all.
had any of these guys in the match, it would have been amazing.
It would have been.
The only one I feel like the only one maybe on the fence about, and just maybe because I don't remember him as well, is like Funaki.
Yeah.
Was he a cruiserweight or?
Yeah, he was good. He was good, but he was better as SmackDown's #1 announcer.
That's right. Oh, I do remember that.
I love that. That was so
right.
great.
Yeah.
So Chavo,
he was awesome.
Chavo wins, and I think he last pins Ray. Right? Does it say?
It doesn't say who got pinned last. Just says the Chavo won.
I'm pretty sure it was Rey Mysterio, but it was good also, except for Billy. I hate Billy Kidman's falling star press.
You don't like his shooting? I used to love that move. It looked so cool. I mean, it was so reckless looking.
Yeah, but didn't he like knock out people with it, like legitimately?
Yeah, that's fine, sure, but this ain't ballet, Lou. Okay.
It's not.
He's putting those educated feet to good use.
Okay. PS2,
Sorry.
Michael Cole.
No, that was Jerry Lawler. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Jeez.
Chavo wins.
Okay, so 10 minutes, 27 seconds. Chavo is victorious here as we are at our halfway point for the event, and up next, what could be considered the worst match of the night on the card by a country mile. And a match that, quite frankly, I was looking forward to
We all were.
ever since it was teased when one of the guys debuted. Yes, so this was Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg in what was supposed to be a dream match.
Yeah.
Like, a dream match for like a year, 2 years almost. You're like, this is what, because you remember when Brock Lesnar debuted, there was the Goldberg chants over and over again because he was a big jacked up dude, had the big trap muscles, a really impactful finisher, and black trunks.
Yep.
That's Goldberg. That's Brock Lesnar. So we have this kind of, and the way it was formulated basically, so like they were talking shit about each other, and then the last straw was Goldberg helping Eddie beat Brock for the championship at the last pay-per-view, No Way Out.
Yes. It started
like,
started at Royal Rumble. Lesnar helps Angle eliminate Goldberg, and then Goldberg goes to No Way Out, helps Eddie win.
Yep. So, but here's the thing: they wanted it because, and I don't know if they knew this was going to be a shit show, but the only saving grace of this match was, in fact, the special guest referee, a one returning Stone Cold Steve Austin, who at this point was retired from professional wrestling as an active competitor, but he was still very much involved in the show every week, and would certainly still give out a stunner every so often. So that's kind of where he was in this. What was his reason for being the special guest ref? That I don't remember.
It was he was still involved. He was Sheriff Austin.
That's right.
I think Vince McMahon, like storyline wise, didn't want the match to happen, and Austin was pushing for it. He goes, "Fine, Lesnar versus Goldberg at WrestleMania, and Austin's the referee. You're gonna try to control this."
Okay, and that's what because that was always a dream moment too. Was the dream match before when you had WCW and WWF, it was Goldberg versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Because you had the two bald guys with a goatee and black trunks.
Yeah.
So this was like the closest opportunity you'd get to them in the ring at a time.
It's amazing that your two biggest dream matches of WCW versus WWF in the Attitude Era, you had a WrestleMania with Goldberg and Austin in the same ring. And then you had a WrestleMania with with Taker and Sting on the same card, and neither match ever happened.
Yep, never happened. I think with the Austin Goldberg situation, it was an injury thing, right? Because by the time Goldberg showed up, Austin was done.
Austin was done, and then this is a year later after Austin's done. You want to come back? You want to fight Goldberg? Just ask Bret Hart about Goldberg. I'm not knocking. I actually really love Goldberg. He's
I do too. He's great.
Like, not his quality of match, but just the whole aura of Goldberg and that streak during WCW and just the intensity of like, this man's like legitimately going to kill you was amazing. Can never ever be duplicated again. I didn't care about his matches. I just want him to come in, spear somebody, jackhammer them through the ring, and then go up the ramp again. I didn't care. I did not, and that was the thing about WCW fans back then. They didn't, in the best way, they cared because they loved him, but they didn't care Goldberg was going against El Dandy. I mean, who am I to doubt El Dandy? But if you were going to a Nitro, They didn't care they were getting El Dandy versus Goldberg. They go, oh, shit, this guy's going to die. And Goldberg snorted up the pyro and screamed and snarled and killed the guy and then killed him again and then walked up the ramp and go, oh, that was great. You know.
Yep, that's what you wanted.
You wanted, and even when they tried to do that with Ryback, it got stale. The fans, got tired of, Ryback versus jobbers. Goldberg, they didn't care. They didn't care.
Yeah. It was just because it was more than just that. It was everything about him was just like and I feel like you kind of had that a little with Brock Lesnar when he first showed up, where he was so dominant, and you just wanted to see him.
But it was believable.
F5 a dude, and that's what it was. He was like if Goldberg knew how to actually wrestle, that's Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
As far as the aura of him, like to this day, like regardless of what's going on behind the scenes with Brock Lesnar, like the dude to this day, like you go on Reddit, anytime there's mention of Brock Lesnar doing something outside of wrestling, you're like, oh shit, I just let him do whatever he wants, otherwise he'll eat me. Like he still has that aura about him.
He does.
You know what I mean? So yeah. And there's not a lot of guys that do. There's one other guy I would say that could top that as a younger star. Do you know who that is?
Okay, are we talking about with backstage talk or just like on-screen presence?
I mean, I would say both, maybe, but like a guy that like would be believable is like this guy's just going to come in and kill you. There's one guy, a new modern new generation guy that I think has
like
that.
Like okay, currently or from
like now,
right now. This
like
guy,
currently on the main roster.
Currently on the main roster of WWE.
Yes.
I don't want to take up too much time, so I want to try to think quick. I mean. Could it be Roman?
No, it's not Roman.
Who is it?
Braun Breaker.
Yeah. I heard a guy at work told me that he's been clocked at going off the ropes at 27 miles an hour.
Yeah,
which is
you watched
insane.
You watched him hit the spear. Yeah, you watched him hit that spear at the Rumble this year.
Yeah,
like it was. He's very just intense.
Yeah,
and he's believable because he can actually wrestle. His uncle is Scott Steiner. He's a Steiner. Like come on,
he's a Steiner. Yes,
like. He's got it. I think if they can do it right, like I love watching his matches.
No, he looks like he could
anyway.
tear you apart. Absolutely.
Yes. So anyway, all right. So that match ended. That was okay. We haven't talked about the Goldberg. Let's go back to it.
Yes.
So you were in the audience. I've watched this match. This match is boring as fuck to watch. Is so boring. Yeah. What was it like for you being in the audience?
So here's the thing. You got to rewind it just a little bit. We knew Goldberg. This is the internet wrestling community is not always been around, but it's been around since the 2000s. But still, in early 2004, it's not what it is now. If there was an epicenter for internet wrestling community people, it would be New York City in 2004.
Yep.
So on top of smart marks in the crowd, and it's WrestleMania, and it's New York City, they all knew Goldberg was leaving. So going into it, you thought, well, Goldberg's leaving. Lesnar's going to get the win. It kind of sucks. I know who's going to win. And then it gets released online like a week before that that Lesnar's leaving to go play football or try to play football for the Minnesota Vikings. So you're kind of like, whoa, that sucks, but who's going to win the match now?
Yeah.
The crowd was into it. The video package, Austin came out first. I mean, crowd were crazy. Goldberg's entrance got a huge pop. Lesnar's got a huge pop. It was great. And then the bell rang. and nothing happened. Legitimately,
so I thought
nothing
the booze
happened.
Started before then.
Nothing fucking happened.
There was
So that's the thing. Nothing fucking happened. So I don't know if they both legitimately just didn't give a shit, but I know they were the crowds. They were saying na hey goodbye, or we don't want you, or go home. There was a Hogan chant at one point because a guy stood up dressed like Hogan. There was a "We want Brett" chant at one point, and some of these you can't hear, or you can hear you could hear something. But you can't make it out because it didn't get that loud. This match sucks. You both suck. Austin chants. Hogan chants. We want Brett because Brett has still not come back at this point. There was a guy that got up and dressed like Macho Man also. We didn't give a shit about this match. And Rock kind of gets that sometimes. Hollywood Rock got that. Like, if you don't want to be here, there's the door. This was two guys, marquee guys, that didn't want to be here. Get the hell out. That was the New York sentiment of, okay, great. What most people would do in this situation is, I'm leaving. I need to do good for the company and my coworkers and put on a good show for them. They did the complete opposite. It was terrible. There were some high-impact moves at the end, but it took so long to get there. The crowd booed Goldberg when he hit the spear. They booed Lesnar. The pop was when Austin stunned them both.
Yeah.
And if you listen to JR's commentary, when he stuns Goldberg, he goes, Austin just stunned Goldberg out of a WWE ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think anybody was really happy. It sucked. It was bad.
I wonder about that stunner too, if it was like, did they call an audible to say, hey, watch for the stunner? Like, this crowd needs to come back? Or do you think that was always the plan
to
anyway?
have been the plan. There's no way. No way. At worst, they called, at best or worse, either way you want to look at it, during the match, may have told them, I'm going to stun you when I give you the beer.
Yeah.
But, no, not good. And not good for a long time. Both of them were gone for a long time.
That's right, yeah. So this was, their last appearance for...
Goldberg was, Lesnar was 8 years.
8 years for Lesnar, 10 or 11. No, it was at least 12 for Goldberg, I think.
Long time.
It was a long time. And, of course, the match itself certainly felt like all of it here. 13 minutes, 41 seconds. And it was
3 minutes of action.
Well, that's a typical Goldberg match, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're heading slowly but steadily toward our main event here. Up next is our second of two Fatal 4-Way Tag Team matches, this time for the SmackDown WWE Tag Team Championship. We have defending Too Cool, featuring Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty, defending against the world's greatest tag team, Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas, who I love, by the way. Amazing tag team. Love their entrance music.
Great, yep.
Yes. You have the Basham brothers, Doug Basham and Danny Basham, and then you have the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw. This was a big return for Bradshaw, right? This was his
Yeah, they had during the draft the previous years, they broke up the Dudleys and the APA, and they realized you want to see the APA, you want to see the Dudleys, so they brought both these teams back together. Fun fact: I have my WrestleMania 20 program, and I wanted to get somebody to autograph it that my dad would like. My dad has since passed away. And Farouk and Bradshaw came to an autograph signing up here in upstate New York. And I said, well, I think my dad would really like JBL and Farouk, or Ron Simmons and Bradshaw. Yeah. They were super. I know JBL gets a bad rap sometimes, but I met them. They were such nice guys. I told them why they were signing this and this, that, and the other thing. They seemed to be genuinely touched by it. And they said, well, your father had good taste in wrestlers. Thank you. So, and they signed it. They signed it as John Bradshaw Layfield and Ron Simmons. So it was pretty cool. This is after they're in the Hall of Fame. So they both inscribed the Hall of Fame. This was to me, was the last breath of the Attitude Era here with Scotty, Rikishi, and the APA.
That's true. That's fair, yeah. Cause as far as that, and then you've got kind of the Ruthless Aggression era tag teams with like the Bashams and Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas. Who, by the way, and I'm sure there's been comparisons. I wish we could have gotten a Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin versus the Alpha Academy.
Oh yeah,
or the Alpha. Yeah. I feel like that would have been incredible.
They were in the wrong time period. Those two. Yeah, they would have been better in the Golden Era, or they would have been good now.
Yep.
Or
Agreed,
or
100%.
just if some other company got them. If they were WCW, ECW, hell, even TNA, it would have been better. But
yeah,
another story for another day. But that match was to me the most bland. The Lesnar Goldberg match was terrible, but we made it enjoyable. We hijacked it. We made it fun.
Right.
This was just bland. There was nothing special about this.
Yeah, well, and it didn't last as long as the first Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match. This one only lasting 6 minutes, 1 second, with Too Cool coming out victorious there. So defending their championship successfully at WrestleMania.
Bloodline.
Right, yeah, technically.
Kishi, yep.
That's right, man. I'm curious if he's going to show up through this whole thing, by the way, for the whole build to Mania 40.
He's run over people before for The Rock, so you never know what he's going to do.
Especially for Roman, yeah. I don't know, man. All right, so that leads us to our next match on the card, which actually, I remember this match, and I remember it was pretty good, but you tell me, this was the hair versus title for the WWE Women's Championship match, Victoria against Molly Holly.
Nobody thought Victoria was going to win and defend. Nobody thought that. And the backstory is there was not supposed to be a women's match. Okay, I don't know entirely, but it was either there wasn't going to be a women's title match at WrestleMania, or there was going to be one and Molly really, really wanted to be in it. Either way, she convinced somebody by saying, if you do this, I'll shave my head.
Yeah.
And Victoria wins with a backslide. When has that ever happened?
Not at Mania.
Yeah.
I mean,
in general, when has it happened?
Victoria was. That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. But Victoria was a face at this point, right?
She had gone. This is when she kind of became like the little hip hop music and
twerking, and before twerking was cool.
Yes,
and
I still like Psycho Victoria better, but she's a solid number 2 in WWE for me right now at this point.
Yeah.
And she could wrestle.
I would agree.
Boy, was she a good wrestler.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Because nowadays there's really you can count on one hand how many women in WWE can't wrestle. Like, they're bringing in good wrestlers for the most part, whereas back then you got lucky if you I would say Trish was an anomaly because she was gorgeous and a valet that turned into a really good wrestler. But then because you had the Ivories and you had the Jackies and the Jazzes who were good wrestlers, but they weren't eye candy necessarily. Victoria was kind of both. You know what I mean? She came in as a wrestler, but was also crazy, hot in a weird, crazy way. If that makes sense.
I always like the hot, crazy ones, don't I?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then Molly Holly could wrestle too. So I guess that's not, I mean, she was always a good wrestler.
It was starting. This is the very, very early days of things slightly teetering towards women that could actually wrestle. Because like you said, we have Jazz a couple years earlier. We had Jazz, Lita, Trish, Molly, Victoria. But the eye candy is still there with the, Sable's still on the roster,
Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler, which I think is fine. I think this sounds so sexist, and I don't mean it to be. But there's a place to have female wrestlers and female valets, and I forget who said this recently, but just like there's a place for male managers and male wrestlers, right? It's the same equivalent. Was it you?
Yes.
Oh, I knew it was somebody brilliant.
It was me. Okay. There is, Paul Heyman is not a wrestler. Paul Heyman is a manager.
Right.
My girl, Dawn Marie, was not a wrestler. She was a valet, but they tried to make her a wrestler. Same thing with Stacy. Same thing with Tori. They weren't wrestlers. They were managers. I don't even like the word valet. They were managers. Like you said, Trish is the anomaly, where she was a full-fledged manager, but she became a wrestler. And on the flip side, how about this? Someone like Lita that was a wrestler became almost like a full-fledged manager for a couple of years with Edge.
That's right. Well, because she was injured, right? Or
she was back, but her neck probably wasn't 100%, or she just didn't need to. She was so over. Yeah. But I agree. There's room for wrestling as a freak show. There's room for everybody with every type of skill set, body type, language, appearance, anything you want. But at this time, Victoria being, and that was the thing, there was only one women's title. There wasn't the Divas title wasn't out yet. Natalia's
a couple years ago.
Yeah, Natalya came years later. Another one that really started to change everything. But then the Divas search happened, and the Bellas, and there was always a few that could go. There's always a few,
but it wasn't the norm.
Exactly. So it was. I thought these two were fantastic wrestlers.
Yep.
In general, I could say these two were fantastic wrestlers, period, done. For this time period, they were the best they had. And yeah, Molly got her head shaved. Like
and
cue ball.
And that was a big
Not a
buzz.
Yeah, not a buzz cut. She was a cue ball when she left.
Yeah. No, I remember that, and then I remember the next year. I forget if it was WWE SmackDown or if it was like Day of Reckoning on the GameCube. But I remember she had the bald head. It was Bald Head Molly was who you could play as.
Funny.
They shaved her heads. I'm trying to remember what game it was. But anyway, okay, so that match fairly short, 4 minutes 52 seconds. But I mean, in the crowd, I mean, you watched it. Enjoyable for you?
Yeah, I think everybody was into it. The reaction. It was almost like a dual pop.
Yeah.
It was, wow, a backslide one. Oh, my God, a backslide one, and Molly lost. Like, if you watch it back, it was like a cheer and then another cheer, like when they realized, oh, man, what are they going to do?
Right.
So they did it, and
they did
actually during Kurt Angle's entrance, it's still happening.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Let's segue into that then next here. So for the WWE Championship, no longer called the Undisputed Championship because it's exclusive to SmackDown, we have Eddie Guerrero defending his championship against Kurt Angle. This match I have watched, by the way.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, this match was amazing.
This is wrestling. This is pro wrestling. This is good stuff right here.
Now, you'll have to refresh my memory because traditionally the title challenger is because of the Royal Rumble, if winning the Royal Rumble. But since the brand split and you have two world championships, one brand always gets the shaft on the Rumble. How did Angle? I forget how he got into the world title picture because I wasn't watching SmackDown.
They just did a. Remember, this is
like a SmackDown Battle Royal or whatever.
I think this is still when Heyman's writing SmackDown because it's still SmackDown from 02 to 05 to me was on fire.
Yeah.
At least 04.
Mm-hmm.
So you could at least say 02 to 04. I think that they just took these are the top three contenders and they're having a triple threat match at No Way Out. We're going to face the champion.
And that's all it was.
And it was Angle, Cena, and Big Show, which is how Cena and Big Show came about.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, and so that's all it was. And obviously, Angle and Eddie had wrestled each other before. This wasn't like a first dream match, whatever.
No, they had done
right?
during the they called them the SmackDown 6. It was Eddie, Chavo, Ray, Edge, Angle, and Benoit. They were the SmackDown 6 that really just took off. And every week, because it was like a three-way feud for the new SmackDown tag titles. Every week they were interchanged, but that's what Heyman used to do with ECW. He would just take things and just intertwine them. And one week you'd have Edge versus Angle, and the next week you'd have Chavo versus Benoit. And then he would just every week you'd have something. It was so great. So you'd have seen Eddie and Angle face off mostly in tag matches prior to this. Yeah. But this was their first really big one-on-one matchup.
Yep. And it was, so we had a heel Kurt Angle, obviously a very, very over babyface Eddie Guerrero. Yep. And I remember the finish of this match was awesome. Mm-hmm. And it was, so basically, you watched the match. Tell everyone what happened.
I do want to say about one other spot that was amazing and really popped the crowd. We all thought it was the end. It was so well done. Do you remember when a person would be on the top rope and Angle would spring up and run up the turnbuckles?
And do like a belly to belly or whatever?
So there's a spot where Eddie's on towards the end of the match. Eddie's on top. I can't remember if he missed it or not, but I remember the sequence where Eddie's on the top rope, Angle springs up, runs up, and Eddie pushes him off, and he goes for the frog splash. Like, I'm like, Jesus, man, that's so good. It was so good. Yeah. The ending of the match, Eddie undoes his boot a little bit, and Angle goes to the ankle lock, and he has it, and he's trying to pull Eddie away from the ropes, and the boot goes flying off, and Angle's sitting there holding the boot of Eddie, and he charges Eddie, and he gets them in a inside cradle in a small package, but what doesn't get noticed a lot is not only did Eddie get the boot off, when he's in the inside cradle, Eddie's feet hook the bottom rope also. Oh, so he scissors the bottom rope, and Angle's sitting there. It sounds terrible. It sounds, if you don't know what Eddie was doing in this time, why would you want essentially now it is the main event. They don't acknowledge the other one, which we all understand why. For all intents and purposes, this is the WrestleMania 20 main event when they go back and discuss things. Why would you want the WrestleMania main event to end with a guy's boot coming off and hooking of the ropes? We all fucking loved it. Eddie was the shit.
Well, and it's funny. It's funny, too, because we just got off of talking about how Victoria won with a backslide. I got to say a roll-up like this has got to be up there, too, with like the quick win, right?
But it's Eddie. It makes sense,
but
though.
with purpose. No, of course. And Angle was pissed afterwards. I remember that, too. Like, Eddie's walking away like, I got you. And Angle just sitting there in the ring, just super pissed off. He didn't look weaker because of it. I mean, it was one of those where both guys came out looking better than they did going into it.
Yes. Angle looked like he was a machine, and Eddie was like, I got you over. But that was the thing. Eddie's gimmick, he didn't have to beat you. If Eddie won by hooking the trunks, that was Eddie's character at the time. But then he turned into then he turned into a monster heel that summer. It's like, woof, different side of Eddie. That was good.
Psychotic. That was like, I mean, that brought you back to like the kind of mid to late WCW heel Eddie Guerrero, where he was kind of just a freaking ruthless.
Could do a whole show on Eddie. Absolutely love him.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So
great match.
Good stuff here, and we're getting
match of the night.
Okay. All right. Fair. And coming in at 21 minutes, definitely the longest match on the card so far. So, all right, up next we have an attraction match, I guess you would call it. The return of your favorite wrestler of all time, who it was. It felt like he had been gone a long time. In reality, it was like 4 months. It really wasn't that long, or 5 months.
Yes, Survivor Series.
Survivor Series. So I guess this was in April. I guess this
was
March
14th, when 2004. Dates,
so there you go. So
my
about
lucky
5
day.
months.
I always play the lottery on March 14th.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So just to give you a little bit of a backstory here. So Undertaker was facing Vince McMahon in a buried alive match at Survivor Series in 2003. Kane comes out, helps Vince bury the Undertaker. Undertaker's gone for all intents and purposes, and all of a sudden you see all these weird shit happening. Now, going into this, before this, Undertaker was still in his big evil / American badass gimmick. He had kind of done away with all the supernatural stuff. Gets buried by Kane, who was a psychotic heel at the time, and all of a sudden you start seeing weird shit happen that's like reminiscent of the old Undertaker. And I used to get so hyped for this because every week Kane would come out. Oh my God. And like the arena would go blue, there'd be smoke coming out here, you'd see hints of the old Undertaker, and so you knew something special was going to happen with the Undertaker. Like it wasn't like that. Wrestling, gossip behind the scenes wasn't like it is now, where plans for people, but you knew, like, when you tell me, like, did you realize, like, you knew that like this was going to be classic Dead Man Taker or something similar with the way they were kind of doing the supernatural stuff?
If you remember Royal Rumble 2002, Taker fought Lesnar at the previous year's No Mercy in 2002. Not that I really liked SmackDown in 2002 and 2003 that I remember this. SmackDown was the best. So they had showed vignettes leading up to Royal Rumble 03. Lesnar won that one. Taker was still Big Evil. Face Big Evil. He had just lost to Lesnar at Hell in a Cell. So, but the vignettes, they showed 3. One was the old Undertaker with the gloves. Then the second vignettes were the modern Undertaker, like Ministry of Darkness era. And the third vignettes they showed was like Big Evil. So you didn't know what was going to happen at that Royal Rumble. He comes out and he's Big Evil. I'm like, okay. So with this, you kind of knew, but there was still that little thought in your head, like, well, they kind of did something like this. But at that year's Royal Rumble, Kane was in the ring, and the bell goes off for the next entrance, and it was just Undertaker's bell, his gong. People say gong. It's not a gong. It's a bell. It goes off, and he freaks out. That's the first time it happened. And the second time it happened, like, the ring started to move. Once that stuff started to happen, like the ring started to move when Kane was in it one night, Mm-hmm. There was another one where a casket came out. There's a casket, and Kane opened it up. It was the old urn. So you had a pretty good indication this was going to happen. And there was no challenge. It was just the dead will rise in this many days. And I said WrestleMania, and Kane's like, I'll fight you at WrestleMania. You're dead.
Right, yeah.
There was no formal announcement. Kane was, pun intended, on fire at this point as a heel. Was just
Yes.
unstoppable. It's such good booking of Kane. And his entrance is really cool, too, because, again, they have that big, wide set for WrestleMania, and Kane's entrance video went across all of the set, and it looked like Manhattan was on fire, which was really
awesome.
looked really cool for the character. And Taker, Paul Bearer came. The Druids, Paul Bearer, that bell goes off, and it's the Dead Man. But it's like, it's not really the Dead Man. It was a hybrid, which was confusing. Yeah. But Undertaker has been quoted as saying that he didn't, when he agreed to go to the American Badass in 2000, I can never go back. They said, oh, yeah, sure, don't worry about it. And they said, we want you to go back. He's like, He's like,
He didn't even want to do it.
I don't want to do it. And they said, well, don't change anything. So, like, when he came back in 2000 as the American Badass, that leather coat was the link to the old Undertaker. Not here.
Yep.
The next SmackDown, when he came out with Paul Bearer as the Dead Man, he took off his hat and had a bandana on. That was the link to the American Badass.
To the old one. Yep.
The entrance was, he didn't have to fight. We just wanted to see the entrances of these two guys.
Oh yeah.
It was a Kane Undertaker match. It wasn't great. They've had better. They've had worse. It was what it needed to be. It was the Dead Man coming back. It was believable. Kane wasn't squashed. Kane didn't lose it. And it's like you said with Angle and Eddie. Kane didn't come out of that match hurt. If anything, they made him. They reinvigorated him. They made him a monster. He fights Benoit in the summer for the title. Spoiler for the next match. Sorry, but it was good. It wasn't great. It's not my favorite Undertaker match. It's not my favorite Undertaker Kane match. But I cannot tell you how many times I've watched those two entrances. Ridiculous amounts of times.
They're incredible.
Yep,
I agree. It's it was the coolest thing ever when you heard Paul Bearer's voice come out. Right? Oh yes, and just a crowd it gets dark and like So I mean, dude, super cool. All right, so obviously Undertaker coming out victorious here with his. Have they mentioned his streak yet? I forget. I'm trying to think. They don't talk about the
streaks. They first mentioned the streak at WrestleMania 18.
17, I think.
18 against.
It was 18. Okay.
Because he goes on the apron. He counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10. They do mention it during the match. It was almost like,
but again, wasn't the point of the match. That happens, I think, the next year, and then going forward, that's his thing. I thought
that was going to be the one that ended it was Orton. I really thought Orton was going to end it.
Yeah.
But Jim Ross, is the greatest play-by-play, not play-by-play, but he is play-by-play man. I like Gorilla and Bobby Heenan the most ever, but Jim Ross is still the best. But just like the Dead Man is back, and remember, the Undertaker has never lost. Like, it was a secondary story. The story was Undertaker coming back. The story was the brothers. The story was Paul Bearer coming back. But also remember, Undertaker's never lost at WrestleMania. So, good stuff.
So, and that leads us to our, let's be honest, controversial main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. And by the way, the timestamp for Taker Kane was 7 minutes 46 seconds.
Perfect.
So short and sweet.
What it needed to be.
Perfect for what it needed to be. Okay, so again, for about 17 years now, this main event is certainly tarnished.
Has it been?
Yeah.
Wow.
17 years this summer. Yep. And I still remember it like it was yesterday.
I do too.
When it happened, because you and I were hanging out when it happened.
Yep.
But we have in the main event here a triple threat for the World Heavyweight Championship, the Raw Heavyweight Championship, with Triple H defending his championship against Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit, who had won the Royal Rumble that year at the number 1 spot. It was, if obviously things were different 17 years ago, and we still had Chris Benoit, this still would have gone down as one of the most significant moments in history, bar none.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a big deal for them to do that with him and to make him the guy, that obviously, what happens just a couple years later, it's insane. So let's just try to talk about this in the context of the time here, 20 years ago. You had so let me ask you, because it was supposed to be Chris Benoit and Triple H. Shawn Michaels kind of weasels his way in because he's like, no, I've got unfinished business with Triple H here. You should have challenged for the SmackDown Championship, whatever. Did you think Chris Benoit had a shot at winning this match tonight when you were in the audience?
No. It was literally, it could be any of these three guys. It could have been Benoit. It could have been Shawn, because Shawn is beloved at this point in his career. And we're in the middle of not in the middle, but we are in the reign of terror of Triple H. It really was a pick. And that's the beauty that WrestleMania sometimes misses.
Yes.
Is because a year later, it's like, this is like the most predictable WrestleMania title matches was WrestleMania 21. There was no way.
Doesn't mean it's bad necessarily, but when you have that extra layer of unpredictability and it's done right, it's really exciting.
It is. And Eddie versus Angle was unpredictable. You didn't know who was going to win. And this, in a triple threat, was unbelievable too. I think most in the Garden felt that Benoit... Well, there's no doubt the Garden was rooting for Benoit. No doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, the working class wrestler.
Yep.
And, you know, Triple H was getting stale. This was, again, we're in 2004. He's pretty much been the guy since the fall of 2002. Lost a title for a cup of coffee twice, but, you know, year and a half, he's been the guy. And Shawn is liked, but also remember, first time Shawn Michaels was booed as when he was a babyface, as a champion, was at MSG. You know, but that was a different era. That's when he was a boy toy. You know, and he's showing his ass at him. I'm like, all right, we don't want to see your ass. He fought Sid. And, I mean, the crowd turned on him that night, but not so much here. It wasn't so much anti-Shawn as it was pro-Benoit.
Benoit, right.
It was a good match. I mean, it is hard for me to watch Benoit matches, but if I had to pick one match I feel okay and comfortable watching, it's this one, because I have my own memories of it. And during this match, because I sat by the entrance, by the curtain, I could see Steve Austin watching openly from behind the curtain. Like, he had the curtain open and he was watching the match. He was not watching it on the monitor.
Not on the monitor.
I tried to take a photo. Again, these are old school digital cameras. You can kind of see a bald head. You don't know who the hell it is, but I know it was Steve Austin.
Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. And it was, man. It was, again, this is one that I've watched. I remember, you know what I remember the most about this, which is hilarious, is like, this was a big deal because Triple H wore white boots, which is like, it's stupid, but I was like, oh, why would he switch to white boots? Like, that's such a random change.
No pun intended, he's a student of the game. He likes that stuff.
But he's never worn them again.
But that's the point.
He's never worn white tights.
He has those white boots in a display case.
Yeah.
He knows
I'm sure.
what
that's
it
true.
is. He knows where he wore them.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. And so I remember this match also being very bloody.
Well, like, Shawn Michaels bled every week now.
That's true, yeah. At this point, he was in his heavy bleeder phase.
Yeah.
he was like Ric Flair, where every match, he was getting busted open. So that's true. And you're right, it was that. And then, but like, I remember because like there were shades of like DX teaming up. Now, they kind of alluded to it, obviously, but like, I mean, there wasn't like, I think the following, or 2 years from now, you had like the tease of DX getting back together. We're close to that right now, but you know, they would team up on Benoit a couple of times, and you know, you kind of had that shades of D-generation and whatever. And then you know, after 24 minutes and 40 seconds, you had Chris Benoit locking Triple H in the crossface, and this did not happen often, but Triple H tapped out.
It was a long hold, though. Long hold. Yeah.
Yes. No, he held. And so, okay, how about this? Let's say we knew Benoit was going over. Did you think he was going to go over on Triple H or on Shawn Michaels? Like, obviously it was Triple H, but...
I actually did think it was going to be Triple H.
You did?
Yeah,
okay. You
like
felt
the
like that had to be the story.
The anointing of a new champion. Triple H had to do it. Much like... Right now, like we're going to WrestleMania 40. We know what it's going to be, but there was a time like, is it going to be Cody and The Rock and Roman? Like, well, if it is, Roman has to take the pin.
Right. Exactly.
It has to be a definitive end to this story. So, some people think it's the greatest triple threat match of all time in WWE.
It's hard to argue that. It's an amazing match.
It's three guys on top of their game in the biggest show of shows for the world title in the main event, and legitimate just by name-wise, all three could have won. By storyline, all three could have won. And for the trajectory of each character, each could have won.
Yep.
It was believable no matter who won that night, they were raising the world championship. And again, that's what some WrestleManias are missing. The only other WrestleMania, like, main event, I don't count this night one garbage. I'm sorry, it's intermission. It's not.
Yeah.
It's one long show. You go on last, you're on last. You don't. Anyway, to me, the only other main event that really had people going, I don't know who's going to win, is Warrior Hogan.
You're saying up until this point, or are you saying even since then?
I'm saying in general. I'm saying this match and Hogan Warrior was a legitimate pick'em for the final match of the night.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's a couple more.
We can have a discussion one time.
We should, yes. We'll put a pin in that one because I would absolutely love to discuss that. All right. Well, that wraps up the card. And as you said, there was no dark match before or after, so this was the match card. So, okay, here we go. The match is over. Celebration in the ring, right?
Yep.
When did you and your dad hightail it the hell out of there to get home?
At the end. We saw Eddie come out, which is on the broadcast. So, put a bow on this because I'm a wrestling fan of the 90s, not just certain companies. I had my time with WCW I liked, and I had my time with WCW I didn't like. Like a lot of people at the end just didn't care for WCW. I really have fond memories of ECW. This night ended. You have Chavo, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Benoit as champions in WWE at the end of WrestleMania 20.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And look at the amount of talent that was in other companies. I take it one step further. Big Show walked in. He technically is a WCW guy. He came in as a champion also. That entire Cruiserweight Battle Royal, Gauntlet, except for Funaki, is a mixed mosh of WCW and ECW. The Dudleys were on the card. Jericho was on, and I know Jericho's a WWF guy. I understand that. But just look at the logistics of these guys. If the Attitude Era ended at WrestleMania 18, WrestleMania 20 was the graduation party.
Here's a fun fact for you. Every single match on the card, except for one, has a WCW alum.
The women's match.
Nope.
What, Victoria? Molly was it? Mona. Yeah, she was in WCW.
Molly.
And Stacy.
Miss Madness and then Mona.
Yeah. What match? What match was it? Oh, Taker Kane.
No.
Well, wait.
I mean, I'm not counting them as like fighting in like 80s WCW.
Yeah.
I'm talking they were on WCW Nitro.
True. All right, yeah, Taker and Kane. Which ironically is probably the two
match.
Greatest other than like Hogan and Warrior and Savage. I wouldn't say other than, up there with greatest creations of gimmicks WWF's ever produced.
I would agree. Yep.
But none of those other gimmicks produced, like Hogan, Savage, and Warrior were great gimmicks, but only Undertaker's gimmick produced another Hall of Fame gimmick.
Yes.
It's crazy.
I agree.
But yeah, that's an interesting stat. But this was, I stayed for everything. And it's difficult to talk about. Benoit's family. I don't mean to laugh. I'm not laughing. It's just that it's not comfortable.
Your process, I get it, man.
His whole family came out. And I have photos of, well, let's leave it at that. The whole family in the crowd.
Okay.
In the ring. And
in
it's
the ring.
difficult. But it happened.
Yep.
But It's two guys that were too small. They weren't American. You have a Canadian and a Mexican. Mexican.
He was American. He was born in Texas.
Was he?
Yeah, he's from America.
Is he?
He was born in Texas.
Was he? He's from Texas, but I'm just saying he's of Mexican descent.
Yes, correct. He's not like a typical white dude.
Yes. It's not Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
Exactly.
So we have a Mexican-American and a Canadian-American from other companies celebrating at WrestleMania 20 in New York, holding 2 titles. That's crazy.
Yep.
So
that is crazy.
Yep.
It's a big deal. Would you say this is your favorite WrestleMania of all time?
Yeah. I mean,
with everything combined with the obviously being there, the nostalgia, the time period.
A little bit of everything. Yeah. I mean, that whole stretch, though, from 2001 to this, 17, 18, 19, 20. Shit, man. They were on fire.
Yeah.
And I like the Golden Age, but this was just, those 4 in a row were perfect.
Bangers.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's right when I started watching WWE, so of course they set the bar very high for me on WrestleMania. So obviously when they started getting kind of shitty, I was like, this is disappointing because the bar was set so high from those 4. Mm-hmm. So, all right, well, that's going to conclude part 2 of our Road to WrestleMania here as we finish our story.
There you go.
With Generation S. So, guys, as a reminder, hopefully you remember this from an hour ago. We are going to be switching formats here on the show, switching names of the podcast, but it's still going to be Generation S in spirit, where we're switching to a retro gaming podcast called Backwards Compatible, but kicking off that with WrestleMania 2000 from Nintendo 64. So excited to talk about that with you, by the way, because we've never talked about it. Really.
No, and we'll discuss another WrestleMania. We'll discuss WrestleMania 16, which had no singles matches. Had one.
Nope. And we'll talk.
And a cat fight.
Yep, we'll cover that as well. There you go. All right, so that means next week we got to be talking WrestleMania 30, right? That's the plan. So stick around for it. WrestleMania 30. Kind of, we're definitely out of nostalgia at this point, but we're into where we were both grown adults, and at least from my perspective, was not watching the product much anymore, but was still following it, online. So it'll be our first real modern discussion of wrestling on the main podcast here. So.
You're lucky I like you. I really don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk.
You don't like WrestleMania 30?
No.
I know you don't. But we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll be back next time with that, guys. And until then, just make sure you are checking us out on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, at Generation S Podcast. Recommend the show to a friend, which is really weird to say because we're going to be switching formats here in a couple weeks, so you may be accused of doing a bait and switch with your friend, and I don't want to ruin friendships, but at the same time, hey, if you think they might get excited about the video game stuff too, let them know about the show. We got a few episodes left, and of course, the other 80 episodes we've done all about growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s. They're not going anywhere. We're keeping them on the feed. We're going to show the evolution of the show here as we transition into this new era of Generation S and nostalgia and a bit more of a focus here, and I'm so excited about it. So, but got a couple weeks left of wrestling talk, so next week, WrestleMania 30, and until then, we'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.